I'm Myles Cameron in San Francisco, where you're going to meet an interesting bird rescue organization and the director and star of the Wild Parrots of Telegraph Hill. Their lives are lived like a Shakespearean play, with all the romance, drama, and intrigue of Romeo and Juliet. Only this stage is 100 feet high, performed on the branches of trees. And much like the slings and arrows that befell Hamlet, the Wild Parrots of Telegraph Hill are vulnerable to life's ups and downs, too.
Well, Mickaboo Companion Bird Rescue basically takes in birds from all of the local shelters, and through people actually giving us their birds, relinquishing their birds to our care. We get in birds that have been left by their owners. We get in birds that have been abused by their owners. We get in a lot of birds that just simply need another home because of their owner's circumstances and having to move to other places. We also get in a lot of birds that have absolutely no story with them, but have obviously been through quite a bit and need an extensive amount of medical care. And that's why Mickaboo is so unique. Mickaboo is able to actually provide the necessary medical care to any bird that needs it, that comes into our care. And that's what we pride ourselves in, is that any bird that needs care gets it.
The birds that come into the shelters often have the same problem that occurs with cats and dogs. There are simply too many of them. Pet breeders, including those of birds, actually overbreed their pets, and that leaves a lot of unwanted animals. The same thing goes for birds, and many callous bird owners consider their pets disposable.
People think they can buy them for $10 at the local pet mart and then take them home, realize it's a huge responsibility, and then dump them on a shelter when they can't take care of them anymore. A lot of these birds would otherwise be euthanized if it wasn't for Mickaboo, because there's just simply no space for them, particularly in the cases where these birds need a lot of medical care.
But the main question one has to ask is, how did the Wild Parrots of Telegraph Hill become wild?
A truck that was delivering parrots to pet stores in San Francisco had an accident right here in Dolores and fell over, and all these birds, all this beautiful color came up and they was flying into the trees here.
The only thing that anybody could think of is that they flew off from a ship, maybe from South America.
If you had a pet bird and you had a roommate and the pet bird made lots of noise, I think a lot of them just got released. It's too loud, so it's gone.
Across the street, in one of these two big houses, there lived an old woman who had parrots, and the story was that when she died, whoever was taking care of her estate let the parrots go free, and that was the beginning of the flocks of parrots on Russian Hill.
I heard of a story where there was a shipment of conures down at SFO, and the box broke and the birds flew out loose.
But the birds' overpopulation and medical care aren't the only reasons Mickaboo takes in the birds. There's something far more notorious.
Found out that it was this roundworm called Balis ascaris, and it comes from raccoon feces, and it was somehow getting into the parrot systems, and it gets into their spine and their brains, so it makes them extremely unstable. And then once they get in there, that's it. I mean, it doesn't always kill them, but it leaves them wobbly or unstable for a long period, for the rest of their lives.
The Mickaboo Companion Bird Rescue Mission statement is really quite simple: to provide protection for those who cannot or will not fend for themselves and who depend on human beings for their ultimate care. Mickaboo is a nonprofit, tax-deductible organization that is run by volunteers. Not one person is paid for what they do, so they need donations, and many donate a considerable amount of their time and energy to keep Mickaboo running in various ways. And one of those Mickaboo rescued birds has made quite an impression since being adopted.
Well, I produced and directed the film, The Wild Parrots of Telegraph Hill, and when it premiered in San Francisco at the Embarcadero, Jennifer Ehrlichman brought her bird, Ferdinand, who was a cherry-headed conure from the flock that she had basically saved and was taken care of and ended up adopting. So Ferdinand made a huge hit at the Embarcadero. squawking and answering questions after the film. And that's how I first found out about Mickaboo, companion bird rescue. They had already started taking care of the sick and injured birds from the wild parrot flock because animal care and control was just overwhelmed. And it's a fantastic service that they do, not only for San Francisco, but for various bird and other animal rescue organizations throughout the Bay Area.
Mickaboo is a nonprofit, tax-deductible organization that is run by volunteers. Not one person is paid for what they do, so they need donations. And many donate a considerable amount of their time and energy to keep Mickaboo running in various ways.
We wouldn't have the spectacular website that we have right now if it weren't for the efforts of our amazing technical volunteers. We have people who spend their entire weekends doing nothing but driving around, picking up birds, picking up cages and other equipment, and making sure it gets to the right place. So without the volunteer group that we have at Mickaboo, we just simply wouldn't exist. We have a fantastic group of people who are members of the board who make all the decisions about the direction Mickaboo wants to go in. And I think that everyone who is a volunteer with Mickaboo has their heart right out there in this organization making it happen, because we couldn't have done it without the entire group of people.
The Mickaboo Bird Rescue Foundation, located right here in the San Francisco Bay Area, is dedicated to rescuing parrot-type birds that are often neglected, abused, sick, or injured. They place them in the temporary care of loving foster homes until a permanent home can be found.
I was taking care of them, and then there was a period where I finally had to leave the hill and I was no longer involved with the flock. And I was sort of a mind just to let, nature take its course. Nature would, that's the way most animals live. But Mickaboo stepped into that vacuum then. And animal care and control here in San Francisco would get the birds, and then they'd call Mickaboo, and Mickaboo would come and get them, and they've been doing a fantastic job that way.
We're talking about sick and injured birds. They sound sort of pathetic. But for people who have fostered these birds and who have adopted them, they absolutely fall in love with them. They're great birds, and they're wild parrots, and they're full of personality. One of the birds that we have in the house, named Parker, had this neurological disease that Mark talked about. And so he's a little bit of a stumble bum. He stumbles around. But he's a fantastically intelligent bird, and we just love him to pieces, and we'll take care of him for the rest of his life. Another bird that we have from the flock flew into a glass windbreak up here on the top of Telegraph Hill, and he has a vision problem. He can't see straight. He can't close the iris on one eye. So we're taking care of Big Bird for the rest of his life. And he's this wonderful combination of a bully and a coward. They're full of personality, and they're wonderful companions. And you should call Mickaboo and adopt one right away.
Reporting from Telegraph Hill in San Francisco, I'm Myles Cameron for North Bay Report.